pin it properly. Especially with the lining. With the muslin, it's not too bad, but with the lining, you especially want to pin it. Okay, so I've already put the front together. Pretty simple. Okay, so I would now go to the iron. I'm not gonna get up and do it right now, but I will do it after. I'm gonna separate this seam, open it up, okay? Or bust it, as the book says, but I just say press open, okay? So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take that seam, just make sure it's 1/4 inch, so make sure you open it all up everywhere, and just use whatever, the ham or any of those curves you want to get along that curve and press that open, okay? So now I have my front piece. So now the next thing I'm gonna do is work on my inside piece. So I'm gonna take my linings and my facings. So I'm gonna take my facings first and sew them together. And I have a notch for that as well, because it's the same pattern piece. And I'm just lining up my fabric, not my interfacing, because my interfacing went a little bit over my fabric. Okay, so I'm just making sure I line up the fabric, not the interfacing. And again, just matching these 2 notches so I don't get confused. And same thing, 1/4 inch. And you'll notice, well, this has the interfacing a little bit, but even the fabric is gonna come up a little bit above it. And the reason for that is where I sew it at this 1/4 inch, it's gonna be lined up, the fabric, see? Okay, so just keep that in mind. Anytime, sometimes it seems like even on the sleeve for the midterm shirt that you guys just did, some people are saying, oh, they don't line up. But where it actually is gonna get sewn does line up. That's what's important, okay? Okay, so I would do the same thing here, pressing that seam open, okay? And you'll notice the top of this bustier does come kind of to a point, okay? So you know which is your top. So this is my center that's been cut on the fold, and then these are my 2 side seams. They go like this. Okay, so again, I'm gonna line them up. Again, just be careful with the lining because it's interesting to sew, it's slippery, it slides on you. So you wanna have pins. If you start sewing on one side, especially when you're doing the muslin to the lining, if you have the lining on top and you start sewing from one side to the other, your lining starts sliding with you. So you wanna keep the pins in there so that they stay where you want them, so they don't start sliding. just shifting this over just slightly. What's that?
We should probably use 2 or 3 times more of those pins.
Yeah, yeah, just because it is slippery. Like the pins is what's going to prevent it from moving on you. You'll see when if you haven't worked with it before, you'll see when you do. But yeah, just use a lot of pins. Especially, I mean, these are small samples, but especially just keep in mind if you were working on a big sample and especially like doing curves, yeah, the more pins, the better. Okay, so same thing here. I want to press this open. Okay, also make sure you're checking the irons because I noticed they get moved, the temperature setting on them. Okay, so just make sure it's not on the linen. The linen setting is a really hot setting. It's the hottest setting. We try to keep them at wool, so it's a little bit not so hot. But if these linings are polyester based, they can singe. Okay, so just make sure you're checking the dial before you do it and just make sure you're okay. They'll iron, no problem, but just keep that in mind. All right, so now essentially what I want is this to be connected like so. So I'm gonna line these up. Now, when I line these up, first thing I always line up is my seams. Okay, so if I've already pressed these will already be open, but I'm just gonna press them open with my fingers and pin them that way so that when I sew them, these seams stay open. Okay, it's important they stay open. And again, same here. Okay, so when I'm sewing at the 1/4 inch, they'll meet up. Okay, so I'm just gonna have to give it a little pull because I have a little bit more facing than lining. But my side seams are lined up. Bless you. Okay, so this is my inside. Now again, press it. I press all these open and press my lining down so it's nice and smooth here, okay? So now I want to connect these. So again, what we're going to do for this one is we're going to go right sides together and then I'm going to flip it back, okay? And it's pretty easy here because we don't have a back, but even if you had a back, you'd have an opening for your zipper, you do the same thing. So I'm going to line up these princess lines. And I want to make sure I get this center point. And again, if you mark your sewing lines, you know exactly where that point is. I'm just going to put a pin there because at that point I'm going to pivot. It's not 90 degrees or anything, but I'm still going to come to a V. and every seam you're sewing is 1/4 inch. So I'm at my point now, I'm gonna pivot. Okay, so I want to turn this, and then I want to press it, obviously. But the other thing is I don't want my back to roll up. What can I do to prevent that? Understitch, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to take my seam allowance and sew it toward my facing. Okay, so I would go to the iron first and press this. It makes it easier.